I'm Andrew Murata, host of the Education, Leadership, and Beyond podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you are listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Hosho McCreesh. Hosho is a creator, an artist, an author whose current focus is the Badlands of the American Southwest. Today, Hosho shares his upcoming work, Psalms from the Badlands. This is so cool. What an awesome conversation. What an incredible read. Thanks for listening. You're going to love this. And by the way, before you go, it'd be so cool if you helped out the podcast. How could you do that, you ask? Glad you asked that question. Here are 3 ways. 1, you could tell a friend and share links. 2, you could go to my website and leave a review and subscribe. And 3, you could click on the link on my website homepage to buy me a coffee. And by doing this, you could donate $1 or $2 to help me address the costs associated with producing the podcast. That'd be so cool. You are awesome. Enjoy the show.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Milletto. Teaching, Learning, Leading K12. Teaching, Learning, Leading K12. Teaching, Learning, Leading K12. With Dr. Steve Milletto.
Hosho McCreesh is currently writing and painting in the gypsum and caliche Badlands of the American Southwest. His work has appeared widely in print, audio, and online. Our focus today is his work, Psalms from the Badlands. Hosho, thanks so much for being on the show, and say hi to everyone.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Stephen. I really appreciate the opportunity to reach some of your readers with this new book. So hello, everyone. Hopefully I'll got something interesting to say.
Oh, I think you will. And let's do this first. Tell us a little bit about work that you have previously created. I mean, how would you describe your style?
Okay. I think I never really try to pigeonhole myself into one kind of writing or another. I'm interested in lots of different kinds of writing. I've written a novel. I plan on writing more. I've got, a bunch of short stories, tons and tons of poetry, and I've even written some nonfiction. I used to work for an underground paper here in Albuquerque, but I've also co-written a book of letters with another poet, sort of unknown poet guy. It was sort of the point of the book was we were both unknown, and these were letters that we were trading. So there's some nonfiction stuff. I had a poem get, by my standards anyways, quite popular, a poem called Cicada, and it's been really interesting how that poem has moved around the world. So I wrote a little nonfiction book about that as well. So just in terms of my style, I think hopefully there's always some humor. Hopefully there's, usually a darker kind of edge to some of it. And more than anything else, I want to sort of honestly present how I'm feeling about whatever I'm writing about. So sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm angry, sometimes I'm sad. And so hopefully that's, that sort of human experience that we all have at times comes through in the writing as well.
That's awesome. And I got to make sure that I say this. We talked about it before we were recording, and I was like, why wasn't I recording? Because one of the really neat things that you do, and if the listener goes to Hosho's website, you will see this page that shows the unique packaging that he's and different editions he's made of different products that he's created. And can you just talk a little bit about just that uniqueness that you've created there?
Yeah, for sure. I really feel like this is an advantage of the small press over kind of traditional publishing, because we don't work in the same kind of like enormous numbers of copies and things. You can give each copy of a book some special attention, or you can try to figure out like a new and interesting and unique way of presenting it, adding stuff to it, packaging with it. I've worked with a lot of really great small presses, Bottle of Smoke Press, X-Ray Book Company. These folks, they've always made like really collectible special editions of things. And so I've learned a lot from working with folks like that. And then when it comes to, when I'm got my teeth into a new project, I think a lot about what could I do that's unique and different. For my big book of drunk poems, I've made a lot of drunk poem animations. For this new book, I've got a bunch of what I call sort of like video broadsides, where one of the poems from the book is superimposed over a really gorgeous black and white shot of New Mexico. There's just the novel Chinese Gucci, when I made that, I made original collages that became the covers for all of the special edition hardbacks. And so ended up making 30 something collages that were, as big as the book ended up being. And I wisely filmed some of that stuff so I could make a little documentary about doing that. It's just, in my mind, it's a thing that the small press can do that maybe larger traditional publishing might struggle with. If you're trying to put out, hundreds of thousands of books, or I don't know, 1 million books, whatever super famous people sell, you couldn't possibly have individual, sort of an individual fingerprint and hands on every copy. And the small press can do that. And I think that we should. So.
That's awesome. And I got to tell you, listeners, you got to go to his website and go look at these editions, because that it'll make you want to buy right there. All right. So
I hope so.
Well, good stuff. Osho, our focus today is your work coming out in August of this year called Psalms from the Badlands. On your website, it is explained like this: an expansive collection of 150 psalms, or haiku-like Japanese-style breath poems about the brutal and beautiful American Southwest, with nature as the catalyst for deeper meditations on life, love, grief, loss, and of course, death. What is it that attracted you to write about the American Southwest?
I think the first thing is I'm just sort of born and raised here, and for me, this book, the American Southwest features in most of my writing, but this book in particular is sort of like a love letter to New Mexico. When I first wrote, the way that the book came about was a press reached out way back when, maybe 2007, 2008, and I did a little chapbook that was called 37 Psalms from the Badlands. But after writing 37 of them, I enjoyed the process so much that I thought, well, there's 150 Psalms in the Bible. I'm calling these poems Psalms, so why don't I do 150 of them? And, jump cut to 17 years later, and I finally finished it. So mainly it's because I was born and raised here, and it's where I spend most of my time. When we go out camping or when we go out walking along the ditches, there's always things that sort of grab your attention or things that stand out to you. And apparently it takes about 17 years to collect 150 good moments like that and write about them. So.
Gotcha. New Mexico is it's just an amazing environment, from evening to seasons to just, in the early mornings. I've experienced them through military excursions and such, and just amazing. I lived in New Mexico for 2 years, and it was just so cool how different it could be. I was in one area where I was the area of Roswell, and at night you'd look out across this expanse, and you'd swear there should be an ocean out there.
Sure. I mean, there is. It's just a sky. It's like the sky is as big as the ocean out here, for sure.
The one of the other things that we're learning night land nav and stuff like this, and with using red lights, not white light, and there's nothing like these little cactus. I don't know what they're called, but put that needle right through your leather boot if you weren't careful.
Sure.
Whoa.
Yeah, no, they're serious. They're serious about protecting themselves and holding on to their water. That is very much a desert thing. It's like, everyone needs water, everything needs water, and it'll fight for it.
You got that right. So what an incredible, though, I guess, environment in which you're pulling from to write these. And even though you're saying it took you a while to write it, I mean, they're impactful. I love the way you're writing. So this is awesome stuff. It's cool that you made your canvas, I guess, is something that I want to say here. So good stuff. All right. So tell us about writing psalms or haiku style. I mean, you got to talk a little bit about, why'd you start there? What made you go there first?
Sure. So I think early on in my writing, I used to write much longer, really kind of almost like screeds or tirades is how I would start writing. And so my poems were much longer, the lines were much longer. And there was a project that I was involved with years ago called the Guerrilla Poetics Project. And what they did, this is an idea way before its time, but what they did is they would letterpress print the poems that were selected to be printed on little like quarter sheets of paper. So if you cut a piece of paper into four, you'd get 4 copies of the poem basically. And then they would send them out to everyone who wanted to sign up and be like an operative for the project. And so they would go all over the world, and people would then take them and go and hide them in like bookstores and libraries and stuff, to be found as a way to kind of, I guess, like a guerrilla marketing sort of approach to let folks know that, there's still people writing, today and publishing new stuff today, and to hopefully folks would find that stuff and seek out the small press. But the restrictions of just a quarter sheet of paper is, you have to write a short poem. And it never really occurred to me how difficult it was to write a really good short poem. Because you've got like no artifice to hide behind. You've got no cover. You've got a handful of words, and if you don't get them right, that's it. You've missed the target. And so the GPP really got me into thinking about it, and I studied a lot of Japanese masters, Basho, Busan, but for me, Kobayashi Issa is absolutely my favorite haiku writer. His life was really not as comfortable as the other guys, and he really struggled. Life circumstances were, very sad for him. And he just had an amazing affinity for even the smallest creatures. And so that's a thing that agrees with me. And so all of that stuff is really what was at work when I got serious about trying to write good short poems. And it's just stuck with me ever since. It's just a thing it's a gear that I love to have. And like every now and again, you bump into a moment and you're like, okay, I know what this is. This is a short poem moment. I just have to figure out how to do it. And yeah, so I've been doing it for years now, and I just love it. And I thought New Mexico shares a lot aesthetically with some concepts that I have about Japan. There's the landscape is sweeping, but it's also kind of minimal in ways that Japanese design can be very expansive, but also very minimal. So I just think that there's a confluence of those two aesthetics that makes perfect sense for me, and this was just a great way to talk about New Mexico the way that I really wanted to. So
that's awesome. I love it. All right, could you share some thoughts about reading psalms from the Badlands? I mean, is your work meant to be read in order from the first page to the last, or is it okay to follow your own path in the book?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I'm probably intentional about the order I put things in, but I'm also not like super strict about it. And of course, like I can't actually really control how someone's going to read something after it's out the door. And I think it's important as a creator to make that kind of room for yourself. I think it's a mark of an early writer to be very, very kind of controlled and want to, I don't know, for fear of losing the plot or whatever, really want to control things. But I think you have to allow space for your reader to bring whatever it is that they're going to bring to your work, because lots of people are going to perceive things that you didn't necessarily see, and it's going to resonate for them. And you wouldn't even know that until they told you. And I think that's one of the magic things about writing, is that readers do bring their own sort of experience to whatever you've written, and it makes it it's the kind of thing that gives a book longevity in the way that maybe other media doesn't enjoy. Because if you read a book when you're 20 and then you read the same book when you're 50, the words in the book haven't changed, but your experience of the book very well could change. And so that's kind of like a magic thing, and you have to have room for readers to do that. And so I'm just happy for anyone to read it however they want to read it, or listen to it, or hear it, whatever they want to do.
I love it. You know, one of the things, and hopefully this doesn't offend you in any way, because I collect LPs, albums, records,
Mm-hmm.
and I have my turntable and I even can play cassettes. I have a whole little setup there, and
Sweet 8 tracks.
I haven't got the 8-track one set up yet. I've been finding some though, but I've got cassette tapes. I've got yes, because there's some good stuff out there. People are realizing that hey, maybe somebody will buy these things from me. I don't know what to do. I mean, there's nothing like falling asleep to an 8-track, by the way, because it's going to wake you up at some point. But so I'm really focused on certain styles from like the 40s forward, especially trumpets and orchestral, and then some country or guitar focused music and so forth. And so while I was reading Psalms from the Badlands, I was listening to some early Henry Mancini orchestral stuff from the early 60s, and as well as Chet Atkins, guitar player. And, so there's no words with either of those. And it was just very neat mood kind of music. And that's what I was listening to. I was listening while I was reading your words, and it really fit well for me. And what I wanted to ask you is, do you have any music in mind when you're writing or creating? Is there something that's kind of there for you?
I've my entire writing career, I've always written to music, like you've said, music without lyrics, so you don't kind of just like wander off into like what you're hearing and lose track of what you're doing. And so I listen to tons and tons of Miles Davis, tons of jazz when I'm writing. I've also like listened to classical music. When I'm writing, symphonies and things like that, ambient music, or like some of this more modern atmospheric stuff that doesn't really have lyrics, every now and again can put you in an interesting brain space. One of the things I do for big and longer projects, like novels and things, is I will build a playlist for those as a sort of like quick little short circuit kind of jump cut back into the brain space of writing that project, kind of like hearing the same songs over and over. And so, I build my own kind of little soundtracks to write to for projects, and it's worked for me. I really like it, and it does, I think, help you get back to your ideas like quicker. There's sort of sense memories that we have that come from sound and come from smell. It can be, can be really, really striking. And so I love using music as a tool when I'm writing, definitely.
That's so cool to know. That's neat. That's I got to tell you, Chet Atkins works very well as Henry Mancini. So
I have to give it a listen.
All right, so let's take a look at a couple of the Psalms. The first Psalm that begins your book is so impactful, and it goes like this. And I don't know how this is me reading Osho's words. So, gunslingers, desperados, men of granite and grit, and yet in the battle between water and stone, we all know which eventually wins. All right, so could you share a little about what you were thinking when you penned these words? Because I think this is cool.
Sure. So this is, this was one that I wrote years and years and years ago. And I think for me, there's this, I think in the American Southwest, and, obviously in America, and at this point, kind of even in the world, there's this sort of concept of masculinity and kind of macho tough guy things it's very much on display in all these sort of cultural callbacks to things in the American Southwest, like cowboys and, desperados, men of grit, but the idea for me was there's the trappings or the sort of illusion of toughness. And then there's like actual toughness. And, actual toughness can be very, very different than the kind of images that we're kind of sold. And, in my mind, someone who is actually tough is able to solve tremendously difficult problems, not with fists or guns, but with their brains and with their heart. Doing difficult things and doing them in really humane ways is that's the sort of idea that was at work with me. So you've got the image of the tough guy versus the simple fact of a slow drip of water given enough time could almost cut the world in half. So that's pretty darn tough. It's just also very patient.
Love it. That's so awesome. And yes, that is very patient, and the other not so much. So
sure.
All right. So I'm gonna read a couple more here.
Okay.
Spider web and scarlet sage. Morning dew glistens, pearls on every thread. I know I've seen this spider. That's so cool. And another, a sugarcane field near the Rio Grande. I couldn't have been more than 5, chewing raw cane as we worked the field. I don't remember the sweat. I don't remember the work. I remember the sugar. And here's another. Fissured veins, black, gold, and ochre. Splay the tumbled stone. It's unmistakable blue. Turquoise. Oh, I love the imagery that you create with your words. Could you share about how you chose or how you choose words that you use? And what's going on there?
Yeah, sure. I think I feel pretty lucky in that a lot of my words are there when I sit down to write my early drafts. It's almost like I'm not writing until I have them or I have most of them. There are occasions where I know there's a specific word that I want that I can't yet remember. And so like in my writing, I'll put a little bracket around whatever word I use, knowing that like, this is the idea, but this isn't the word. And then I'll go back and figure it out later when I'm editing or whatever. But I think that word choice is a huge part of our own individual style as writers. There's lots of ways to say, the same thing. And so word choice is one of the things we've got control over as writers. And, much like special editions and much like other things, I want the ideas to be immediately communicated, but at the same time, if there's an opportunity for a little bit of razzmatazz, a different kind of word, a word that's maybe super very specific that feels like it's right, I definitely want to like keep working until I find that. And it's just a matter of the poem doesn't really feel done, or the piece doesn't really feel done until you got them all just right, I think. So I guess that's the approach, if there is one.
Oh, that's cool. It's so powerful because I feel, and all my senses are working there, I guess is my point. Even with the spider web, I'm thinking of a morning with the dew, and there's aromas that go with that. When you're out in the woods or in the desert or something like that just come through, and I think it's the petrichor, the smell of moisture in a desert is like one of my favorite smells in the entire world. And anytime it's like has just rained or is starting to rain, I'll race outside so I can smell it. Nice.
I think if you get your words right, there are things that come across in the work that become obvious without having to be said. And so, it's worth trying hard. If you feel like you're not getting your words right, just keep doing it. Don't let it out the door till it's good, basically.
Nice. Love it. Here's another one. Buzzards circling, and our minds fraught yet beautiful, and just like death, impossible to escape. Death is referenced in your writing, and it seems to me the passage of time as well. The inevitability of death is also there. Could you share your thoughts about this topic?
Yeah, sure. I think, I mean, it's one of the fundamental human questions is death, and I don't think, I mean, at least in this country, maybe in the whole world, we're not really good at death, not really good at kind of uh, thinking about it, confronting it, accepting it. We're always sort of caught off guard by it when it happens. I had one of my very good friends just this past week lost his battle with cancer, and so I think it's a kind of thing that's present in a lot of my writing, as a way for me to kind of spend some time considering it, thinking about it, being as prepared as you can for death, because I think that takes some of the whatever makes it scary. I think if you spend a lot of mental time on a thing without like ruminating to the point that it's debilitating, I think it's useful, and that's a thing that just I've always kind of done myself. I feel like I'm naturally built to be a lot more introspective than I am kind of, outgoing or gregarious. I'm a lot more internal, and so it's a comfortable place for me to think about big ideas and things that are, as humans we should figure out as soon as we can, so that we're not completely caught off guard by them. And maybe writing about things is a thing that helps me, and at the same time, other folks maybe read it, and if they get something out of it, then that's about as good as it can be as a writer, is to impact other folks that you maybe never meet and otherwise wouldn't have ever known.
Well, I got to tell you, those words are powerful, and they pull out the everything from the aromas to the imagery. You can see this. You just, to me, I could just see it in my mind's eye, and it's just awesome. I love the words you're using. I'm going to read another one. Here it goes like this: a mantis hidden on the underside of a bent sunflower, and most of the good we've done without witness. Oh, this is such a powerful thought. I mean, when you write, do you have a theme, or is it what comes to mind at the time? Just because what you're seeing.
When it comes to these poems in particular, I think my approach became kind of starting with the image that grabbed me, and so start with the image and sort of craft that in as few words as possible, so it's really tight and concise. And then after I had that, I then would think about, like, what does it mean to me? Like, why is this image staying with me? Why is it that, like, it just wouldn't go away until I wrote about it? What is it that it means to me? And so that became the kind of, like, the organizing principle for a lot of the Psalms, was like, what is it and what it means. And then throughout the course of writing the entire book over the 17 years, I noticed that some sort of imagery that kind of reemerged, poem, like years and years apart, a poem about a weeping willow or a poem about a Japanese maple, were very specific kinds of themes at work. And so that's what those things meant to me, but I didn't realize that kind of until after the fact. And that became a sort of a bit of an organizing principle, kind of picking out those threads and those themes, and realizing, oh, there's a larger story if you follow along, the weeping willows and the Japanese maples. That's a whole kind of its own little arc in the book, that if you pluck those poems out and just read them, you're like, oh, that's what that stuff's about. And it's completely accidental. I'm certainly not like that clever as a writer, or that, measured and planned out. It's just kind of a thing that happened after the fact. So thematically, I guess the answer is I don't really start with it. I try to be as true as I can to it as it's, as the moments are coming. And then after the fact, spend some time thinking about, like, oh, so what does it all mean when you put it together, kind of thing.
I love that. I love that explanation. And just as, the creature that you're using here, a mantis, unless they're standing on the side of a house where you can say, whoa, that doesn't belong there. For the most part, who knows how many of them you can pass in a day and not even realize that they were right near you.
Yeah, they're pretty clever. I really like them as a bug too. They help with insects that bother us.
Yes.
And they're just very cool. I really like them.
I'm on that planet with you. I love it. Love it. All right. So now this may not be a fair question, so let's just go with it. But did you spend time in the wilderness of the Badlands? I mean, when you wrote Psalms from the Badlands, or did you gather thoughts, collect ideas, and write elsewhere?
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely comes from, like I said earlier, it definitely comes from moments. And so what will happen is that there's a lot of little acequias, which are like small ditches that connect to the Rio Grande, and people that have water rights going way back with properties that are like closer to the river. The acequias are what feed those properties and allow for their water rights. And so there's this whole kind of like capillary network of little ditches to walk around my house, and then like going on camping trips and meeting up with my wife's folks as they're out camping, and we can only get away for like a day or so when they're going for like a week. But yeah, like for me, what would happen is I would see things, there would be moments, there would be a sort of like strong visual that stayed with me. And then if I knew immediately like why it was impactful to me, then I would write it right then. If not, I would, just consider it later when I had a chance to. But I mean, for sure, I mean, New Mexico is such a sort of cinematic and just naturally beautiful place. Very, very different kinds of land depending on like which direction you go. And so yeah, it's a great, I mean, I guess it takes about 17 years to gather them all up because I'm not camping every weekend or anything. I am a sort of a creature of comforts. I like air conditioning. But yeah, certainly being out in the world and out in nature was a big part of what made this book happen.
So awesome. It makes me think about an image that I'll never forget when I lived in New Mexico. Was I had to go with some friends to Albuquerque, and this was like in January. And so you know, 5.5 hours north from where I was. And the closer you got to Albuquerque, then you went up into the mountains. And then you came down, and it had started snowing just as we were going up and then coming down, and you saw the lights of Albuquerque down below and this light snow. And it was kind of it was very much a darkish red, getting dark. And it stuck in my mind forever. That was the most impressive sight. I was like, my friends kept saying, just watch the road, please.
Yeah. How can I?
Exactly. It's like, oh my gosh.
The world's putting on such a show.
You got that right. All right. So you're producing 4 editions of Psalms from the Badlands. Could you especially describe the collectible edition is limited to 26 lettered artisan paperbacks featuring a Japanese stab binding? What does this mean, and what will it be like?
Sure. So, again, like some of the folks that I worked with over the years who've made really beautiful special editions, like books that come inside of clamshells and slip cases and just really awesome hardback editions of things. That put it in my mind early on to do like really, really cool, unique, beautiful things, like, the best you can think of to do. And so almost all of my books have like a collectible version out there. And that's a thing that I hopefully will do for the rest of my writing career. So this book in particular, the Japanese stab binding is, you've got kind of 4 holes through your entire book block. And you use, in this case, I actually use this really kind of thick Irish linen bookbinding thread. And you basically, you sew a pattern through those 4 holes that becomes the binding for the book. And so that's what the stab binding is. And so that's part of the special edition. The other part is, well, I'm hoping to make a lino cut for the cover of each one. And I say that having only made one lino cut in my whole life, and I've got a whole month's worth of work in front of me in terms of being ready for the launch date in August. But each of the special editions will have a lino cut of a little sketch or a little, drawing or whatever that I've done of something, some of my favorite things in New Mexico, like plants or landscapes or mountains or, little flowers, whatever. Some of the cactus you mentioned earlier, one of my favorite cactuses is the cholla. That's really kind of tall, and after it dies, it almost looks like a skeleton, like a braided skeleton, these gray and black with all these holes through it. And so there'll be a lino cut of some cholla for sure. But yeah, so between the fancy Japanese stab binding and the its own unique and original lino cut on each cover, that's what will make up the special editions. And then the other editions, a thing that's really important to me as a writer, as a publisher, and anytime I work with another press, I always want there to be sort of different price points or ways for people to be able to engage with something that doesn't exclude anybody. And so I always want there to be a really affordable ebook if that's what folks prefer. And I've taught myself how to make audiobooks so that there's an affordable audiobook version if that's the way that people prefer to engage with a project. And then of course your more standard sort of trade paperback edition that's basically cost what books cost. And so that's the goal with all the different editions, is to make sure that there's hopefully a price point that's comfortable for everybody, and anyone who's interested in the book and wants to engage with it has a comfortable way to do that.
So awesome. I love it. And thanks for explaining that. And what a great transition, because we're going to go right into, tell the listeners where they can find additional information, connect, and learn more.
Sure. Okay. So probably the best place to find, whatever it is I'm getting up to is at my website, which is hoshomccreesh.com. www.hoshomccreesh.com. I've spent a lot of years, building this thing and making sure that whenever I do something that's interesting to me, I find a way to get it on there, and hopefully it's, interesting to other folks. These other sort of multimedia projects that are associated with books, they're on there. You can also find them on YouTube, or going back even a place like Vimeo. And then I goof around on Instagram, not necessarily always book related, basically just making jokes and things, and some occasional book stuff over at Instagram. Those are mainly the places. And hopefully on my website, you can find, if you ever want to send an email or whatever, there's a way to email me there. Yeah. So that's the website is the sort of like the clearinghouse where I gather all the different kind of stuff, book related, paintings, all the other kind of stuff that I get up to. So
excellent. And I'll put that information, the link to your website there in the show notes, so they can easily click on it and find you. So good stuff.
Very cool.
So I got one last question for you, and it goes like this,
Sure.
Hosho. Do you have a teacher in your past who made a difference in your life? If so, who was it, and what would you say if given the chance to say thank you?
Yes, more than one. I feel like I've been extraordinarily lucky throughout my entire sort of scholastic career, going all the way back to elementary school, all the way through graduating college. I always had teachers who were interested in me, who were encouraging. So I've got a whole list of names. Going back to elementary school, there was and a lot of these teachers have passed on, and so I would love to be able to say thank you to them if they're no longer here. But Kay Goodman was one. In 5th grade, I had a teacher named Mrs. Jensen. In 6th grade, I had a teacher named Mrs. Roper. I think it was 7th or 8th grade, I had a teacher named Mrs. Pittard and a teacher named Mr. Rubin. They were both like just great and interested in me. I changed schools, and when I went to a new school, again, I found more awesome students, teachers like Mrs. Sanchez, Mrs. Furstenberg, my Spanish teacher, Senorita Cortez, I had like a coach and a teacher, Mr. McDougall, who did a really amazing class about like all the bones in the human body. I learned the bones. I learned them like one pass through because he was such a great teacher. And then when I got to college, I had a lot of good teachers in college, but there were three in particular that I mean, in college you can know teachers in ways that you kind of haven't known them in your earlier career because you're either approaching adulthood or you're more like an adult. And so I had a really great teacher named Melinda Lewis, and then two writing specific teachers who were both really interesting and accomplished individuals in their own right. One was a guy named Digby Wolf, who was one of the co-creators of the show Laugh-In, and he had like Emmys and American Comedy Awards in his office. He had Groucho Marx's hats from a show that he worked on. When Groucho Marx came through the show, he asked him for his hat, and Groucho Marx gave it to him. And then the other guy who was tremendously impactful for me in college was a guy named Gus Blaisdell, who was a really, really, probably one of the smartest people I've ever known, and one of the most interesting people I've ever known. To be that smart means that your experience of the world is different than other people's, and it's a great thing to be surrounded by people like that. And so if I could say anything to all of them, it's like, thank you so much for caring about me as a kid and encouraging me. I think Mrs. Goodman even sent some of my writing to the Albuquerque Journal when I was in elementary school, and I remember seeing it published in the paper and it making it kind of, oh, this is a thing that you can do. You can be a writer and you can write things and they'll be published. And so making that a sort of real idea for me, she was super responsible for that. So, I mean, I've got love in my heart for all of them.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. That is so cool. Osho, thank you so much for talking with us about your work. Psalms from the Badlands. Powerful images, impactful ideas are shared through your words. Oh, inspiring. Wishing you the best in all you do.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephen. Good luck with everything you're doing and keep doing it.
Hey, you have been listening to Teaching Learning Leading K12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching Learning Leading K12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.